Hello and welcome to Talking Bottom. I'm Ange Pearson.
I'm Paul Tanter.
And I'm Matt Brooks.
And this week, this final week, we have been talking over the last 9 episodes, this is now the 10th episode, about Rik and his many faces. But this week, we couldn't touch upon Rik's other work without talking about his superlative work as a narrator, storyteller, not necessarily his face on camera for a lot of his audio work.
But sometimes with
So we're going to try and go through sort of chronologically in order to structure it. The first thing we're going to talk about this week is Grim Tales. The narrator that Rik embodied in Grim Tales was what I first watched as a child and learnt about Rik. I don't know whether other people out there listening have the same story. I'm sure a lot of you have different ideas, but the first thing I ever watched and remember of Rik was Grim Tales and him as that narrator in that chair. And I fell in love with him as a storyteller, as an actor, as a performer, all of those things. So I'll just go over Grim Tales for anyone listening who hasn't ever watched it. If you have, they are all up on YouTube. Grim Tales is a British television show. It was a children's television show based on, of course, the fairy tales by the brothers Grimm. It featured Rik Mayall as the storyteller. He's dressed in pyjamas and a dressing gown, sat in the most wonderfully created animated chair with arms that move and interact as he tells the stories. There were 22 episodes that were broadcast on ITV for Series 1 and then Channel 4 for Series 2 between 1989 and 1991. There was also a release on video and audio cassette. Interestingly enough, the videos that I had and owned, they had a BBC logo on them.
Right.
Which I always thought it was a BBC production for many years.
Probably BBC Worldwide distributed it or something like that.
Yeah, it's really, really interesting that it went from Channel 3 to Channel 4 and BBC have their logo on the video, but whatever it is, whoever it is I have to thank for bringing them out on video, I thank you, because it was one of the most wonderful things. It was directed by Bob Baldwin. If you haven't watched them, he sat in his armchair. It is all just pure Rik down the camera, but it's woven in with these incredible animations that bring the stories to life as he goes through them in his own inimitable way. There are 22 of them. The first series for me, we'll talk through your highlights, guys, but The Three Feathers was the very first one in April 1989, and then you've got things like The Hare and the Hedgehog, The Fisherman and His Wife, Three Little Men in the Wood, Hansel and Gretel, of course, Rumpelstiltskin, Sweet Porridge, and Three Doctors. And then the second series in 1991 was the one that I wore out the videos for. You've got episodes like The Griffin, The Frog Prince, The Boots of Buffalo Leather, The Gnome, King Thrushbeard, The Turnip, The Little Peasant, and my personal favourite, The Wolf and the Seven Little Kids.
So the Grim Up North audiobook that you sent us a link to, is that from?
No. So we'll move on to that, because that was a lot later in Rik's career. In fact, it was one of the last things he ever recorded, was that he worked with Mike Bennett to do another load of Grimm's tales that had been adapted by Mike Bennett, more obviously children's stories, but he readapted them and they were told in a different way, and there was different stories like the Gingerbread Man.
Right, that's what threw me, because it's called Rik's Famous Last Words, because it's one of the last things recorded of him, and then you watch that as a kid, like, what?
Completely separate projects.
Okay.
And because Rik was such an amazing narrator, he was asked to do voice work in so many ways over the years. He voiced Hogs of War, a video game. Mm-hmm. He obviously was asked to do Wind in the Willows, which you're going to talk about, Paul. Memorably for so many people, obviously this was, again, it wasn't just audio, but Jackanory, George's Marvellous Medicine, that caused a big stir at the time, didn't it? There was actually a lot of critics because kids were being taught, to poison their grandmothers, and Rik brought it to life. But it's a Roald Dahl story, of course. But Rik brought it to life in such a way on the TV for kids. He's there, he's actually making the potion on screen, isn't he? He's putting all of the hairspray and everything and flour and all the poison and stuff together. And people thought it was dangerous because kids would want to mimic it.
Rik doing Jackanory, especially George's Marvellous Medicine, for me, in my mind, gets mixed up with him doing Grimm's Fairy Tales, because I think it's because he was doing the sitting in an armchair narrating thing.
Yeah.
I think, to my childhood mind, the two sort of became entwined.
Yeah, it was a similar time. I think the Jackanory was a couple of years on, wasn't it, from Grim Tales?
One must have led to the other. He probably got Jackanory because of Grim Tales.
Well, I don't know. I don't know what the conversation with his agent or whoever would have been, because I think Rik was just renowned for being a wonderful voice actor.
It's got drop dead Fred hair in Jackanory a bit, don't you?
Yeah, it's definitely early 90s, I think, isn't it, that George Marvellous Medicine came out? And for me, the Grim Tales, that however that started, like it's just a wonderful thing that he said yes to doing, because he's always for me been that entertainer that can entertain children just as beautifully as he can adults.
Yeah, definitely.
And that it became full circle by, you're going to talk about Jackanory later on. One of the last things Rik ever did, and certainly the last thing ever broadcast on TV that Rik did, was Jackanory on Dave. And that story was for adults. And then we will touch upon The Last Hurrah as well, which is, of course, a fantastic audio series that Rik co-wrote and starred in as the narrator and as Elton the Snowman. All over the place with our intro because there's so much to cover. But the main point that we want to go over this week is that, of course, Rik had many faces, but he also had many voices. The way in which he brings characters to life through accent, through his, obviously on something like Grim Tales, he is being physical, he is acting out a lot of the characters on screen. The way he leaps between female, male, various different accents, gruff, like completely fantastical creatures, brings them to life, just him down the lens. I mean, it is just one of the most beautiful things I think Rik ever gifted. I mean, we love him for his comedy. I genuinely think that Rik was just the greatest storyteller of his generation. Did that, if he'd only ever done storytelling and Drop Dead Fred and those kind of things that were more kind of for kids, he still would have been a celebrated actor, I think. But obviously, it was just one of the many strings to his bow.
I mean, yeah, you're right. When you see him on camera as a performer doing something where he's playing a character, he's a very physical performer. You can see him throwing everything into it. And when you either see him narrating something, as in Grimm's Tales or George's Marvelous Medicine, or you hear it, and you can see it through the evidence of the ones where he's sitting in a chair doing it. He's narrating it, but he's acting it in the chair. He's hunching his back for things. He's stirring the tea when he's talking about someone making tea. His face contorts when he's doing voices. His nostril flares when he's doing other voices.
Yeah, he's learned that the face shapes he makes can change the voice.
And what is fascinating when you brought that up, Matt, about the Mike Bennett audio that you can download, it's there. It only became available last year. So at last year's Edinburgh Fringe, I went to watch Mike Bennett do a talk. He did sort of 6 dates at the Edinburgh Fringe, talking about how he'd worked with Rik, recorded these fantastic stories, but that nobody, and I'm just incandescent with rage, but nobody had commissioned them to be aired on television. They've had them animated, but it is actually it just exists as an audiobook because nobody is backed putting it out there for the world to see with the animation attached. So you can listen to the audio, the bedtime stories. That is brilliant. Listen to all of them. They're really, really fun. Obviously, I don't even have kids, and I've just enjoyed re-listening to. And he does this brilliant Rik, the gingerbread man, and brings together all of these incredible Scottish and Liverpudlian and Brummie accents to bring characters to life. And in that one from the Rik Mayall's famous Last Words, what Mike's done is he's released Rik going through the voices and figuring them out, and take after take after take. And what's really fascinating is that you can hear him saying, "Oh, I need a new tongue. I need a new fucking tongue," as he's going through, and he's just trying to get the voice. And then he's like, "Nope, I'm going to have to stand up. I'm going to have to stand up. Sorry, everyone." And he's just, you can hear what he's doing in the recording booth. He's obviously very physical in all of the voices that he needed to do to get the right intonation.
I'm sure he's probably got asked this at his Edinburgh shows, but he's released the audio from
this. The audiobook is on Audible, and Spotify.
But the animated version he hasn't.
Yeah.
How come?
That exists?
Well, this is the thing. He played it at the Fringe as a bit of an exclusive, and he's looking for it to get picked up.
So that's why he's not put it on YouTube or something, because he wants to hold it back, hoping to get it.
Yeah, because I got to watch them in the room. It wasn't a full room. It was really a shame. He was in the New Town, and it was in the afternoon. And I went to watch it. It was just so brilliant because it was exactly what you hear on the audiobook. If you download that, you can, and it's on Spotify as well, so you can listen to it. And it's just Rik going over and over all the different voices
for free. It's on Spotify.
I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
I paid. I did buy it on Audible just because that was where I first saw it and downloaded it. But it's really, really great. I talked to Mike afterwards, and I did say, obviously this was like last year, and we had the book to finish and all that. But I did say, "Do you want to come on our podcast?" And he said yes. So I'd love to talk to Mike more about what it was like recording with Rik, because at the top of that what he's released on Audible, he tells some wonderful stories about when he got Rik on board with the project,
very, very
and him meeting a lawyer. And I won't spoil any of it because I won't tell it in the way that someone who was actually there will tell it. But honestly, it's worth listening to them just to hear what Rik was like with this lawyer, absolutely taking the piss with him. And you could just hear just everything about Rik singing out of those stories, and you just know it was absolutely pure him. He walked in the room apparently with this kind of like Crocodile Dundee kind of hat on, almost like with the corks hanging off it, and he was like, "It's me, I'm here." He's basically he'd become Flashheart, hadn't he? Like, he loved meeting people who wanted to meet him, I think, Rik, didn't he? He really loved that warmth of like people who respected his work. And he was excited about working still. I think that was the main thing with Rik. So right to the end, he was doing loads of voice work, wasn't he? Because let's be honest, he hadn't actually been offered that many really great projects. But after we talked about Man Down last week, so glad that he was Richard Davis in that. In terms of his telly work, when Jackanory came out, it felt just so sad that obviously it came out posthumously, didn't it? And that aired in like the September of 2014. And I remember watching it and just feeling a mixture of emotions because obviously Rik was a wonderful storyteller. I remember thinking the story could have been actually better. It was the weatherman, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's surreal and interesting. He definitely improves it a notch just from his mannerisms and stuff.
I mean, it's got some really nice bits with actual people acting in between, and
it's a big nonsense story.
It's a sweet little story about. If you haven't watched it, you can find it on I think YouTube or wherever. And there's a nice little interview with Rik talking about him being asked to do Jackanory as well, and how it feels like very full circle for him because he got to do Jackanory, and how he'd watched Jackanory growing up from the likes of Spike Milligan, his influences like Arthur Lowe, and it felt amazing to him to get to do Jackanory. And then obviously he was like, it's great that I'm now doing this Jackanory. He was like, that's a drug, isn't it? Crack cocaine. And it's a lovely little interview with him.
Do you know all the voices he does? At least you obviously think of Rik's voice front and foremost with it, but his accent work and things. I know you two guys aren't into it at all, but I think Rik would have been a really good dungeon master for D&D from his storytelling thing, so that he could.
Right.
The live play. There's a lot of podcasts that people play D&D and they get voice actors to play characters, and the DM will play everyone else, right? So yeah,
I'm sure. Yeah, I mean, I've never played it.
I think just the amount of this when you suddenly have this northern guy for one little sentence, but then you see that guy in your head, like a farmer or whatever.
He boils down someone into just a nugget of a line, doesn't he? You get like the personality and the flair that can come over in just 3 or 4 words from Rik is incredible. We'll move on to The Last Hurrah shortly, but we should finish talking about his sort of children's stuff, I think, before we move on to
his humour's not that different. It just basically took away the swear words, and it's the same manic behaviour that
Well, it's the same richness of his voice, but I mean, completely.
It's not talking down to the kids. I mean,
no, never.
What's great about watching him in Grimm's and also in George's Marvelous Medicine is that you've got this traditional thing of the storyteller in a chair, not moving. I know for some of the George's Marvelous Medicine, he moves around the kitchen a little bit, but generally it starts in the chair. From the moment he sits up in George's Marvelous Medicine into shot with his mad hair and his stubble and his dirty jacket, it's going to be a performance for the camera as well as the voice. And he's someone sat in a chair. Roald Dahl used to do the thing of like, I'm just going to sit here and read a story. With Rik, it's never boring when he sat there, especially in George's Marvelous Medicine. It doesn't throw to the animation as often as you remember from when you're a kid. In my head, it was always like the picture. But actually, when you rewatch it, we're on Rik for so long, and there's never anything dull about it. It doesn't feel like you're sat watching someone not moving, because he's so animated.
I have to say, when I watched Grim Tales, I hated when the animations came on. Really, it's like, get rid of this, bring Rik back on. Like him in the pajamas and the dressing gown, and it's always crazy hair. I could have just listened to Grim Tales and loved it. I know I would have, but like there was a bit actually in Rik's interview about Jackanory where he said what he loved about Jackanory was the intimacy between the storyteller and obviously the receiver through the camera. And that is what comes across definitely in Jackanory, definitely in Grim Tales, is like he's making eye contact throughout the story. He is drawing you in with every move, gesture, look.
Because he's making eye contact and he knows that people are watching, he's energetic and animated, but he doesn't cross the line into cartoonish or caricature. No. When you listen to something like Wind in the Willows, his performance in that is amazing, but that's very, very cartoonish. And you imagine he knows there, I'm in a sound studio, no one's going to see me, so I can play it a certain way. With Grimm's and George's Marvelous Medicine, he knows he's on camera. So it's this brilliant sort of he walks the line perfectly between the right level of energy and animatedness for this particular story, but without kind of like being a caricature and over the top.
Too over the top that's uncomfortable to watch.
Yeah.
It is literally that he draws you in and you are engaged with him from beginning to end. You want to know how the story finishes, right? And you enjoy every single step along that
So
way.
I've not listened to everyone. Does he ever take any liabilities with the story and change the outcome of what you would expect?
Oh, well, I mean, have you watched Grim Tales?
Not all of them, no.
Right. Well, Grim Tales was adapted from the original Brothers Grimm
Yeah.
stories, which are obviously incredibly imaginative in their own way. Of
But
course.
is it
But
from
yeah,
that, or is it? Does he rewrite it a bit and make it?
Well, so it's not Rik who wrote it. He's
Okay.
obviously telling the words that have been adapted for Grim Tales, and the same with Mike Bennett's words. He's obviously bringing them to life. But yeah, they definitely don't always end in the exact same way that the Brothers Grimm stories ended. But there will always be that moral learning. One thing that really struck me on the rewatch of Jackanory was because it's years since I read George's Marvelous Medicine, right? So I can't actually remember how the book ends, but like all of the, you know, the grandma shrunk away into nothing, and then Rik just stares down the camera and he says, you know, George, you know, didn't say much, you know, the very, you know, and it goes really serious, and he's just like, he had his fingertips on the edge of something magical, and it's like he realized he was, and then he just goes, goodbye.
Yeah.
And you're just like shivers.
It's because he knows I've got you here.
Yeah.
I've got you, and I'm just gonna leave you back.
Hanging on his every word. And obviously that's Roald Dahl's incredibly imaginative stories. I mean, people have been critical of Roald Dahl's language. They've been critical of a lot of language in comedy that we all hold dear, right, over the years, right? And I think it needs to be addressed. That I personally think that accent and stereotypical ways in which of speaking, you know, talk about it that way, accent, right? And personal dialects and all the rich fabric of what makes people is so inherently important to comedy. And that is why Rik was one of the greatest storytellers of all time, because he could jump into and embody so many different accents and attitudes. It's about different attitudes and how they interact with each other. And that is belied by your words and your actions. A little bit of a Cockney, a little bit of a Scouse accent can really get across. So you're just a bit of a laid back kind of guy, can't it? And then jumping into, you know, well, no, actually, I'm the princess.
Yeah.
You know, and you just, within a few words, you're like, yeah, this is an arsehole, or this is kind of a cool dude, or whatever, you know? It's
really makes me think of Richie Rich, but way back when we were talking about in Cat Flap, where he has to play a milkman.
Yeah.
And he says, right, what would my character be like? Oh, he'd have a limp and a hunchback. What would he be like? He'd be a Cockney. Yeah? Be a Cockney. And then he goes, hey, by God, make it thump. Like, gets completely wrong. Just obviously the character is nowhere near the performance
but I
now was.
Rik could jump into, I mean, it seems like pretty much any accent he could jump into. Like in Grim Tales, one of my favourites that still comes out at me occasionally is definitely Shiny Boots with the Geordie. And then you've got, like, he goes through Scottish, he goes through, like, any number of, obviously, posh as well. And then what is brilliant, though, that occasionally Rik just does himself as well. And that's still a character.
Yeah.
He'll do the sort of straighter, sort of, you know, just like, and not even just as the narrator.
He's kind of himself as George.
Yes, exactly. And he'll find that sort of baseline of his voice, which will still be really animated and engaging, but then he's got somewhere to go.
Yeah.
It's either up or down, like really gruff as the Gruffalo, or he'll go up and he'll be a woman, and he'll be, and obviously, you know, this is voice work, right? I'm not telling people that anything you don't already know, but I just think we had to celebrate the fact that Rik was I just think untouchable. Can you think of anybody else who was able to tell stories in that way?
I don't think there's been anybody else who has influenced so many parents who have used his style of genuinely, who have used his style of storytelling when they have been reading stories to their kids at bedtime.
You talk about yourself, right?
I read Little Rabbit Foo Foo in the style of him doing
not the furry honeypot adventure. Little Rabbit Foo Foo. She sounds great.
I'll literally do it, but add things like, I don't like your attitude. Well, obviously people can't see that I'm wagging my finger at Matt right now, and that's true.
And the kid loves that, right?
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. And I think, having spoken to other dads, there are a lot of other dads who do a similar thing.
Oh, I mean, I hope not just dads. Like, when I do stories for my nephews, I will try and put on accents and I mean, I think a lot of people do try, but the particularly beautiful thing about Rik Mayall's storytelling was how much he brought things to life with a look, with a screwed up face,
with a flare of the nostrils.
Exactly.
Eyebrow raising was always.
Let's face it, like, with a speech impediment. But
Yeah.
like the Rik with his rolling of his R's, and he's got a speech impediment, hasn't he? And the thing in comedy that obviously people say, you shouldn't really pick up on someone for a speech impediment now. And of course that is true. But it is undeniable that when somebody speaks and they say something that isn't how you expect it, it makes it funnier. And then the repetition of that makes it even more funny. And it's just part of the rich tapestry of life that people have different ways of speaking.
Yeah.
And Rik tapped into that. And it's not cruel. It's never cruel. It's always for the love of getting across a character and how funny they are generally.
Well, it wasn't for a speech impediment, but complaints came in after George's Marvellous
Mhm.
Medicine, with some people calling his performance dangerous and offensive. But as you implied earlier, Ange, it wasn't because of anything particularly bad about Rik's performance. It's because people were taking it that it was sort of encouraging kids to poison their parents, right?
Yeah, ridiculously overreaction.
And
Who is it who watches things like this
and-
and thinks, oh, this is dangerous?
And the reason they thought it was dangerous was because kids were so enraptured by Rik's performance. They were so taken in by it. It got such a big reaction at the time. If that had been delivered by a boring narrator, no one would have reacted to it, and no one would have thought kids are going to take seriously the prospect of poisoning their grandparents. But because kids were so into it through Rik's performance, through the window of his performance, fussy old fuckers got thought, oh no, kids might actually get it.
How many episodes was it? 6?
I think
5, Jackanory.
It's
There
like
was 5. It was one every day from Monday to Friday.
Okay.
That is the point, isn't it? Like, Rik invited you. I think as a kid, I'm taking myself back to my kiddish self. You were in on the joke and in on the story, and you're in on all of his physicality, and you wanted to mimic. You did want to mimic him. Me and my brother, we used to quote Bottom back and forth, right? And you'd put on Rik's voices, and you would do all of that. And the same with Grim Tales. And that is, people say to me, "You were only 8 when you watched Bottom." I'm like, yeah, because I'd watched Grim Tales.
Yeah.
You could not stop me watching more Rik.
This goes to something you said earlier. Rik had a fantastic way of communicating directly with children without coming across as patronizing, without coming across as an adult trying to be down with the kids.
Yeah.
He had a great way of just sort of empathizing with them that you saw in Grimm's, that you saw in Jackanory, and that I think was one of the main reasons that he was Drop Dead Fred as well.
Yeah, I've said this before when people have asked me, what is it about Rik that you love so much? Or tell me what Rik was like when you met him, things like, and obviously I met him just literally 3 times in my entire life, right? But what he did, I think, was, I don't want to go quoting and sounding like ridiculous, but he could tell what you were like. He could see your energy, I think. He was very good at reading people
Emotionally
and
intelligent,
feeding off
wasn't he?
other people's energy. He knew exactly how to pitch it. If someone was nervous, he would, always be the sort of open person that would draw them out of themselves and just say enough
Obviously,
that wouldn't make them any more nervous than they already were, or just make them laugh and put them at ease. He would put you at ease.
this show is the many faces of Rik Mayall. I get the impression that Rik would probably have a skill for, within a few moments, sizing up which of his characters was that particular fan's favourite, whether it was Fred or a Flash.
Absolutely. I mean, I was brandishing my Drop Dead Fred DVD cover, and I asked him, can you sign it to Snotface? And he said, okay, but what's your real name? And I was like, Angela. And he wrote to Snotface Angela. And it was just so lovely,
Making sure you couldn't flog it later on.
Well, maybe, but it was more that I just wanted to be, Snot. But he was like, no, I'm going to personalise it. What's your name? He was like, you're saying Snotface, but what's your name?
That's nice.
He was being really lovely.
Because he probably knew that later, even if he'd just written Snotface, later on you might have gone, oh, I wish I'd got it personalised as well.
Yeah,
do you know what I mean?
Exactly. And, I got his book. It was his book signing, so I'd taken that along as well. And we should talk about his book as well. We're hoping to have Max Kinnings on the podcast to really get into the character that is, of course, the Rik Mayall as well, that Rik embodied. Another face of Rik, I think we should touch upon, is the Rik Mayall.
So this is his bravado in interviews and
his
stuff.
overinflated ego that he himself has talked about, that he kind of plays a persona of himself. Because I think as the years went on, A, people expected that, and B, I think Rik was a very private person. If you actually do think about, he never really gave any interviews that, betrayed anything about his personal life particularly. I think there's a couple of bits where he'd obviously had photos with his children and celebrated that part of his life. But he very rarely did anything but talk about his work, did he, in interviews? Or he was playing a character, or he was playing up, or he was being flamboyant. And that, he said, the thing that I like to do, he said it in one of the interviews, I think around Believe Nothing, was that he's fascinated by the idea of the ego and how far you can go with that, and then the fall.
Didn't
That fall from grace.
Age mention in the I'm Exposed documentary
Mm.
he didn't quite like how Rik started to play Richie in the later tours, where he started playing Rik Mayall playing Richie instead
Yeah.
of just Richie. Whereas that bit of what you're saying, you
The,
think,
well,
with
I think the lines blurred, I think.
Mm.
But what I don't think it was a negative thing. I think Rik enjoyed interacting with fans and he enjoyed giving those fans exactly the Rik that they wanted to meet. You know, they just met like calm Rik having a cup of tea and a fag. That wasn't going to be a story that they were going to be able to share, right? And I don't think there's anything wrong with the fact that he wanted people to share good stories. And there were so many of where he'd fall to his knees and pretend to be giving guys blowjobs and stuff, right? We're getting off topic in terms of the narrator that was Rik, but we will talk about the character that is Rik throughout his autobiography at a later date, because we did argue about what we could include in this series, didn't we? And we felt that just the autobiography wasn't quite enough to do one episode on.
So, other things that he did as a voice where we didn't see, where we weren't seeing him, but we were hearing him.
Yeah.
What should we talk about next?
Well,
I have rewatched recently Wind in the Willows.
Yes.
And I think the version that he did should be seen as the definitive version of Wind in the Willows. It's when you read the book, his version of Toad is how it comes across in the books. And very much like when he jumps in and does Blackadder, he pops in, he steals the show from a load of other great comedy writers and actors such as Michael Palin and Alan Bennett and great actors like Michael Gambon, and he swoops back out again. He's so animated. He's perfect in this role. The first time you hear him in the role, he sounds like he's almost doing like some Richie sort of sex noises that are just held back on the right line of things. But the dialogue is so Rik Mayall-esque. It's a perfect animated
It's as if Toad was written for him.
When I heard he'd done Wind of the Willows, there was no doubt who he played. I'm like, Mr. Toad, I guess. Yep, good. Anyone else, like, no, it wouldn't fit.
The thing is, I would just argue in defense of David Jason. I think David Jason's Toad was brilliant as well in its own way, but nowhere near as great as Rik's, obviously. And I wholeheartedly agree. I feel like Rik being Toad is you don't need to watch any other version, really. You know, I didn't particularly like the live action one, and I should have liked it with Terry Jones and Steve Coogan. Like I love Coogan, but I never really warmed to that live action one. And I don't think it's because I was like, I'd rather be watching the animated one with Rik, but it was just like, this isn't hitting the tone right. Whereas, as you say, like that animated version, I mean, Michael Palin's brilliant. Alan Bennett, like absolutely fantastic in both of their own roles, as well as Moley and Ratty.
I mean, it helps that you do have these guys playing the sort of slightly more stuffy, quiet roles. And for Rik, to be in, he's the contrast to them. Comes in, he steals it from
Wasn't Ed By instrumental in getting him that role?
Oh, was he?
Like, I think he recommended him or something. There's something about that.
Can't remember that, but yeah, I mean, it wouldn't surprise me that obviously that would be part of, how people got recommended to do things. But what we do need to move on to, definitely, in terms of adult Rik and his narration work, is The Last Hurrah. Now, when The Last Hurrah came out, I have to hold my hands up and say that I didn't run to it straight away. I did buy it. I listened to the first one. And I found it a little bit hard to listen to. I'm just going to own up to this fact, right? A, because I was listening to it after Rik had died. B, because going back on the rewatch, and I have to say, I completely hate myself for not having listened to it properly in all these last 11 years, because it's a superb piece of work, The Last Hurrah. It is so richly written. It is so very richly told by Rik, and obviously it's just Rik really in with a two-hander with Duncan Powers, Ed Mullet.
I've only listened to the first one as well, so it gets better.
Yeah. I mean, once you're looking at it as the entire body of work, that it's only one series. It's, for anyone who's listening and who has, similarly to me up until recently, hadn't listened to all of The Last Hurrah, let me just give a little bit of a rundown. So the premise of The Last Hurrah is that this is a gentleman's club that has been around through many, centuries, millennia, really. It's such a wonderful, imaginative, setting, The Last Hurrah. Rik Mayall is not only the narrator, but he's also plays Elton the Snowman. Now, Elton the Snowman is a warmongering, immortal, immoral, talking snowman. He's a snowman, right? This is all obviously audio, so you're invited to think about it at every juncture. He's been alive for hundreds of years. No one quite knows how old he is. He's essentially the worst creature that's ever lived. He's a murderous, treacherous, Nazi-dealing, sherry-swilling pleasure seeker of a snowman. And the one thing that he is missing in his life is that he's got no knob because a dog bit it off, right? That comes up over and over again. I thought it was interesting that so often the comedy conceit with Rik is that he's someone desperate to be able to perform or have sex but can't quite do it through whichever failings, whether it's premature ejaculation or he can't get the girl. But with Elton, it is that he's got no knob to do it with. Let me just describe the club itself for a moment. I mean, I'm going to go to the second episode. Rik's voice pulsates as the narrator. Every single line drips with opulence and debauchery. It opens with the sound of a cigarette being lit and breathed in and exhaled. The episode 2. And it's touch the door. This is the last hurrah, the final bastion of noble indecency, a fortress of ale-sodden, sherry-drenched gluttony. It goes on. I won't do any justice to it. Like, Rik, please listen to it. He talks about the walls being as rouged as a whore's bruised vagina. It is a tapestry of sin within, and you're welcomed into this place that you can viscerally see in your mind that Rik's like conjuring up. Now, the back and forth between Elton the Snowman and he's played by Dominic Vince. It's a chap called Ed Mullet. The premise is that Elton the Snowman's the oldest snowman. He's the last snowman alive. And this guy wants to write his autobiography. He wants to document how old Elton is, all of the stories he's lived and what ill doings he's done in his life. Kind of constantly touches upon his Nazi, who he's funded, what happened in 1940.
Yeah, there's sort of hints at it, isn't there, that he's like, let's move along quickly from it.
And I mean, have you guys, because I don't want to spoil it.
I haven't listened to all of it.
And I don't want to spoil it to anyone listening, so I won't do a plot giveaway.
I haven't listened to all of it. I've listened to some of the early ones, and I think I'm still on the fence about it. I think I'm still yet to be won round.
Well, please listen to all of them. That is all I can say, because for this episode, I'm so glad that I have. I listened to it, and I've listened to them twice through now, and it is just so beautifully written. Obviously, Rik's voice work is incredible. The way in which he interacts with the other characters, and obviously he's the narrator as well. It's not quite as jumping around as Grim Tales because there are only literally sort of 3 characters, 4 or 5 that like leap in. And I will say this, like the other characters are a little bit like you're left desiring potentially a little bit more from them. But
played by?
I think, well, I mean, the only other credit is Duncan Powell. I mean, it's written by Craig Green and Dominic Vince, and Rik Mayall was also a co-writer. And Rik's writing drips and oozes from so many of the words. I think I put off listening to it because Rik had's gone, and I thought in my head, in that similar way, like you said earlier, about saving something up because you don't want until it's the last thing you've listened to, right?
It could until you've watched it, it could still be perfect. And but then once you've watched it, it will have flaws.
Well, it wasn't even that it might have flaws. It was more just sort of, I listened to the first one. It's a lot. It's a lot to listen to. Like, please do take any other distractions away from you and just sit and listen to Rik, right? Because there's a lot of information that's thrown at you, and it's very, very richly woven. I don't think it was that I thought it was going to be bad as such. I think I just didn't want it to be the last thing I'd listened to, because I've watched everything else of Rik's, right? I've heard everything else of Rik's. So that's why those bedtime stories by Mike Bennett were an absolute delight to listen to, because that was new Rik as well. And that really is one of the last things he recorded, because The Last Hurrah was done in 2012. And it was released on BBC Radio 4, but only 2 episodes. It was edited down, presumably to take out a lot of the rudery.
In terms of his performance, because I have listened to some of them. Tell me if you agree with this, Ange. I would describe it as what we've talked about his other performances earlier, being very energetic and kinetic and animated. This one feels more like the kind of Rik who would use words like lugubrious and lavicious and that sort of thing. Like there's a lot of brandy that's been drunk. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, I mean his voice is literally as if it's dripping with sherry.
He's point, isn't it?
He's taking sips of and gulping down drinks at certain points in it. And I absolutely agree. It's like I don't want to compare Elton the Snowman to anyone in particular, but it's like he's an old Tory boy in the corner. He's someone...
Who is the best Elton? Is it John? Is it Ben? Or is it the Snowman?
The Snowman, obviously. But what I got from listening to it this time, fully, was that this was a character that Rik had written in his later years. He'd co-written it. He was fully invested in this as a story, right? And we've always said that the best work Rik ever did was generally the stuff that he had a hand in writing as well, isn't it? I know a lot of his voice work was written by other people, and he would always bring things to life. But I do think there's a richness to the language, and there's a silliness that creeps in about knob gags, and what The Last Hurrah is quite literally, in hindsight, it was Rick's last hurrah, because of course, Man Down, he didn't write Man Down.
Yeah.
He does it brilliantly, and Greg Davis has obviously written the part with him in mind, so that's why that works, and it's fantastic, and it's his last physical role. But Elton the Snowman, I would say, like, you should really, really give it a go, because I was unsure, and I will hold my hands up to that. And I'm really glad that I have now fully listened to it. The final episode and the way it wraps up is just delicious. The way it all wraps up. Like, I won't spoil any of it,
Okay.
but definitely listen to it.
On your recommendation, I will stick with it.
I don't know whether it's, I mean, obviously, because like I say, the first ever thing that I watched Rik do was Grim Tales, and then I fell in love with obviously Bottom and Drop Dead Fred and all those things. And if I need to cheer up, like, all you would need to do is put on the play-in music for Grim Tales, and put on one of my favourite Grim Tales, right? I'll just instantly be in a better mood for it, right? That's what comes from watching something when you're a child and loving it, right?
Well,
I wouldn't feel that way about The Last Hurrah, but what is lovely about The Last Hurrah is how kind of poignant it is, that it is one of the last things Rik ever did, and it is quality. It's quite hard to listen to. There's a lot of involved, story and convoluted things that go on in there, but it's so much fun.
Having re-listened to some of his work for this podcast, such as Wind in the Willows and George's Marvelous Medicine, it's made me think I do need to seek out more of the voice work that he did, such as The Last Hurrah, listen to the rest of it, and any other things that he may have done. Because you know what? Rik, sadly, is no longer with us, so he's not going to create any more work. So if there's stuff of his that you've not listened to before or you've not seen before, check it out. If you don't like it, you don't have to watch it or listen to it again.
I really bemoan the fact that there isn't an audiobook of his autobiography, is there?
Yeah,
Wouldn't
it's mad.
that be so wonderful?
It's written in his voice, you hear it in your head, but it's not as good as his voice would be.
I wonder whether it was asked of him and he said no, or whether it was just never thought about, because of course it was sort of
quite old as well, isn't it? Like, there's the Age one is an audiobook.
Yeah, but that's really recent, isn't it? Whereas Rik's was years before, so it probably wasn't monetized in that way then.
Now there's no way that that someone of Adrian Emerson's stature would get a book deal without the publisher saying we need an audio version with the world of downloads.
Everybody is into audiobooks now, aren't they?
I know everyone listens to podcasts for some reason.
Yeah, coming in your ears. But yeah, I genuinely, I'm so glad that I finally listened to The Last Hurrah. And I would also say Rik was one of the greatest voice actors and indeed actors of a generation. And
funny, isn't it? One of the greatest voice actors and also physical comedians as well. Multi-talented fucker. And with that, I think it's time for a word from our sponsor.
This Christmas, recapture the spirit of Old England. Old England, the great British sherry.
A pint of sherry, please.
One of his last, if not the last, television appearance of Rik was on Jackanory, which owes its name. It's a reference to Jackanory, obviously, and you can't talk about Jackanory without Marvelous Medicine.
Absolutely, yeah. That was one of the ones that I don't think anyone else has caused a stir in the way that Rik's had, right? So
no one talking podcasts about him.
When did Jackanory come out then? Because I know it was obviously for adults and Rik was series 2, wasn't he?
It was series 2, episode 1. I think it was 2014 is when series 2, so it's 2013, I guess, would have been series 1. It's dedicated to him. It's a story about a weatherman. It's kind of got a stream of consciousness thing where it starts off incredibly mundane and realistic, but then just becomes weird and fanciful. I don't want to go into it too much, but basically it's a weatherman who can control the weather.
He discovers he can, doesn't he?
Yes. Through
trying to get a girl.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, there's some animation bits and there's some live action bits. And as you say, when it cuts away to Rik, what are you doing? Why aren't you? Especially when it's his last thing. And I got so choked up when
it cuts away from Rik.
Yeah, he's on the chair, talking to Karen, doing all the little snarls and looks and stuff, and he puts in.
Yeah.
There's things like, there's groupies of weathermen outside. It's like, they do exist. And things like, it's a moment in like, that doesn't make any sense. You think as an audience member, he's one step ahead of you. And he's like, no, I'm going to comment on this stuff.
I mean, I love that opening of Jackanory when it is just Rik sat in the chair. He's kind of properly relaxed. He's got the shorts on.
It's like I've returned, isn't it? It's kind of I'm
but
back.
it's just,
Yeah.
and there's a I think it was a publicity image where it is just him just grinning down the camera in that pose, and that is how I imagine him when he was recording Last Hurrah as well. It's that sort of like, I'm owning this space, and I am
as well. That episode of Jackanory got 372,000 viewers, which is a hell of a lot more than Dave was getting for that.
Well,
it's because it was his last.
Yeah, it was that Rik had died in the June, and it aired, I believe, in September 2014, didn't it? And I really remember watching it and feeling very mixed emotions because, of course, we were all in the early months after losing Rik at that point. We don't need to go on and on and on about the actual story of Jackanory. It's a nice little tale. Rik tells it really well. But I would say, in terms of the final thing you should listen to of what Rik did, I know you can see him tell Jackanory, and it is fantastic. The Last Hurrah for me is the best voice work.
Quite poignantly titled, you say. Quizzy quiz time. So we've done a quiz for every episode of this series.
We did 9 episodes, of course, before this one, which means that we all had 3 to lead. And Paul, have you got the final scores totted up for us? Because we never bothered during the actual recordings, did we?
Yes, I think off the top of my head, and you lost spectacularly with, I think you've got 2 points.
Yeah, I won 2 of the episodes, yeah.
And then the winner, sadly, is Matt. I got 3 points, Matt's got 4. So congratulations, Matt.
A shame.
Well done.
I'm so sorry for you. Does that mean we're going to do no quiz for this one? Or we can do it? Let's do a little mini quiz.
What we decided was, because we didn't know whether it would be a tiebreaker situation, because if we'd all got, 3 each, we would have needed it. And we thought it'd just be a bit of fun to do a few questions on each of the things that we looked at for Rik's incredible narration work.
Right. What's your buzzers?
I will do. It's a bit long, but I'm gonna be a little poo that didn't go away.
Mine's gonna be George.
All right, that's cool. What is the name of the Weathermen only club that Ken Hendricks, the main character, attends? It's a delicious pun.
George. It's Raining Men.
No.
A
little poo that wouldn't go away. It's pouring. No.
It's the Forecasters. The Forecasters. Okay. What thrusting, audacious young talent sort of appears in The Weatherman?
Thrusting, audacious.
What do you mean? Do you mean what actor or actress?
Well, he's not really an actor or an actress, but he's an audacious young talent. Oh, I've said he. It's Michael Fish from BBC's much acclaimed The Weather.
Right. That wasn't worded particularly well.
Was that a quote?
Right, that is from Bottom Line 3. Michael Fish in a thong. And Richie says, what? You mean the audacious young talent from BBC's much acclaimed The Weather?
That was a clue, right? Okay, so I did know Michael Fish was in it, but that didn't come to me in that moment. Sorry.
He's painting, and then he actually plays himself. He comes and plays it really dry and quite funny.
Okay. What is it? Use the forecast.
What are the last words spoken by Rik on the show?
George, fuck off.
No,
I was just telling you to fuck off.
Little poo that wouldn't go away. Good night, children.
Streich, which is a Scottish term for drizzle.
Oh, Drake. Okay.
Right, and final question: what outfit does Rik Mayall wear in his last ever television performance?
Is it a denim jacket and denim shorts as well? I think.
No, they're more like khaki.
I thought it was denim shorts. It's not. No,
beige, aren't they?
They're white. White shorts, black t-shirt,
right.
Denim jacket.
Beige, white, whatever.
I get that for denim jacket, right?
Yeah, okay, sure.
Okay.
Who cares?
I mentioned his outfit earlier.
You did.
Yeah, but not during the quiz.
Apparently, I didn't say white instead of beige.
All right. Okay. Is it my questions?
Yes.
Okay.
Just a bit of fun, children.
Okay.
What are we saying? What are you saying is your buzzer?
I'm going to say Dreich as my buzzer sound.
George's Marvellous Medicine was it followed the broom cupboard on CBBC. Who was the presenter?
A little poo that wouldn't go away. Toby Anstis.
Is correct. He's
it's Andy Peters.
If you watch, Andy Peters used to be a presenter on the broom cupboard along with various other people.
Ed
but when George's Marvellous Medicine went out, it was Toby Anstis. Look for George's Marvellous Medicine on YouTube, and they've got Toby Anstis introducing it.
We'll do a little plug. Watch it on the Rik Mayall Scrapbook channel.
Yeah.
Because that's what I watched it on, and it's got the little intros and the little outros sometimes from Toby. And Toby attempts a Rik impression, which puts him down in my estimation. But then again, I did have a crush on Toby Anstis when I was younger, so more shame on me.
Toby Anstis, the second most successful person to come out of Roehampton University. I went to Roehampton.
Oh, well, there you go. I thought you'd better make that clear.
Next question. Who is the author of George's Marvelous
Right.
Medicine? Oh, Matt.
Roald Dahl.
Correct. Okay. All right. Next question. Who is the author of The Wind and the Willows?
Right.
Matt.
Oh, I don't know. Shakespeare. Oh, no, it's not.
Rik Mayall. Was it C.S. Lewis or someone?
No, it's not C.S. Lewis. No.
It's The Wind of the Willows.
Kenneth Graham.
We're learning.
don't
We're
know.
learning.
And
Okay.
my final question, which of Rick's co-stars in The Wind and the Willows was a former Monty
A
Python
little poo
member?
that wouldn't go away.
Ange
Michael Palin.
is the correct answer.
Another crush I had as a child. I thought
Very
was-
talented man.
fancy
Very
it.
talented man.
He's lovely. Right. Okay. Well, shall I do my question?
Yeah, go
Yes.
for it.
On the door of the Last Hurrah is emblazoned the motto. I'm gonna give you the motto in Latin, and I'm gonna ask you what you what it means. Right? Okay. Bibimus moriendum est. What does that mean?
George, books die here?
Nope.
No. Okay.
No idea.
You don't know your Latin. Let us drink, for we must die.
Oh, okay.
So good. I love that detail. It's a play on. It should be "Let us live,
Okay.
because we must die." Is the Roman saying. Okay. Fill in the blank. Still on the Last Hurrah. Fill in the blank. Old snow never melts. It just blank.
George, fucking stinks.
Ooh, you've added in a fucking, but it stinks is
Okay.
what I was looking for. Yep, correct. I don't even. I haven't even counted up how many we're doing. I've got two more.
God.
In Grim Tales, my favourite one about the wolf and the kids. What do they fill the wolf's stomach with after rescuing the
Right.
kid?
Is it pebbles, little stones?
Stones is the
Yeah.
answer on my card.
Because he has to go to the river and then
He falls in. I'm not
I've got
doing a
Rik
great
Mayall
Rick
here.
impression, but I fucking love that one. The little poo that wouldn't go away is something that just still gives me lots of joy about the kid hiding down the toilet. Right, well, I think that was a quiz. It doesn't matter who won.
Well, thank you very much, Ange. Well, that was a fun quiz to end the show and the series on. That's
Oh no,
been,
is the series over?
that's been our series, The Mini.
But there are so many faces of Rik Mayall. We haven't done Mickey Love. We haven't done any of the Rik Mayall presents.
You didn't do the Nintendo adverts. You didn't do America Werewolf in London. He was in that. Why didn't you do an episode on that?
Yeah,
I hate the people who like my stuff. I hate them.
I love that impression of Reece Shearsmith.
Yeah.
The thing is, I just wanted to say, we've done 10 episodes. We argued back and forth as to whether we should do a Richie episode, as in Richard, but we decided, well, we're going to talk about Richie in every episode. And we've obviously talked about him in every episode of Talking Bottom that precedes.
And also, there's a whole load about him in a book.
Yes, exactly.
Which book? You need to say the name of the book because people won't get it.
In a book called Talking Bottom, The Guide to the Cult Sitcom, which hopefully by the time you listen to this is back out in some kind of reprint.
We'll have done the Fringe by now, guys. So hopefully that went well, and we'll do a special episode. We'll be putting that out about Lee Corns and the fun we've had at Fringe. Follow us on Talking Bottom, at Talking Bottom, at any of the socials that you choose to frequent. But we would love to hear your feedback on this series. Like I was jokingly saying there that, there might be some characters out there that you guys think we should have definitely done. I would have argued we could have done the Bring Me the Head of Mavis Davis. There are a lot of characters that Rick embodied.
Yeah, there were other comic strips that we love Rick in, like 4 Men in a Car and 4 Men on a Plane, but we were like, do we want to do a whole episode on that?
Yeah.
Maybe in another one.
Exactly. So I was just going to say, if enough of you write in and say we really need this one, then we're not ending here. We're hoping to do more interviews with people who actually worked with Rick over the years. Like I said earlier, we're going to interview Max Kinnings, who said he'll talk to us about his work with Rick on his autobiography. Of course, he's got his biography on Rick coming out in a couple of years from now.
I still think we should do the young ones episode by episode.
And yeah, there's an argument for us to go through like the young ones. So we'll see. What we're saying is, don't unsubscribe. Hopefully we'll have more things coming for you soon. But for now, it is the end of this series.
And also, if there's another Rick character that you'd like us to do another episode on, if we do another series of this, tell us which one, but tell us why. Tell us what the character meant to you, why it was special to you. Was it something you grew up watching? Was it something you found as an adult? Tell us, give us your reasons for it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I will just say, because this is the last in this series, we are still very much in the planning stages, but we do want to do a bottom convention. We've had a few people show interest when I've mentioned that on the socials. If you are interested, do again email and say that you'd like to, because the main barrier between us doing it and making it a reality is, of course, to know that there will be people who would be willing to travel, because people travelled to pick up their books in Hammersmith, but for an actual convention where we'd have cast and crew and Q&As and signings, hopefully, and all that kind of thing, like we'd have to charge to pay the guests, wouldn't we? So it would be great to know a bit of a, email in or just tweet at us or whatever, and let us know if you're interested, because if we do get enough people saying that they would, then maybe we can make it a reality before too much longer, either by the end of this year or early next.
Well, good ending to this series. I feel, anything I add to it would be superfluous and a waste of time, so I won't say anything.
That's the same for everything you've ever said on this podcast, isn't
That's
it, Matt?
what. That's be speaking to my parents.
No, thank you very much for listening, everyone. We hope you've enjoyed it, and take care, and do keep talking bottom.
More like talking bollocks.